These are the shackles and the swivel I use to connect my mooring line to the heavy-duty stud link chain. As you can see, this is all pretty massive stuff. To give you an idea, here's my hand for a size comparison. Fortunately, about 2 months ago, I replaced the mooring lines and the swivel and the shackles because the old ones, the old metal parts were showing some pretty heavy signs of wear, and the line, especially where it's up out of the water, had been exposed to the sunlight and UV for quite a few years. This is the rest of the mooring line. That's somewhere around 15 meters long, and I have the floats attached to keep the ends of the mooring line up on the surface so I can retrieve it pretty easily when I come in with the boat. That's all in quite good condition. Over here is the chain that I had. We had another lightning thunderstorm last night. Squall. Really strong. Had one lightning strike. Anyway, you can see the size of this stud link chain. Quite heavy. It weighs 7 kilometers per meter of length, and it's about 10 meters long. It is a good thing that I brought it all up here on deck. I wanted to take it ashore for an even better inspection. But many of the links are still in pretty good condition. But I didn't realize this before. Previously, some of these links have been welded together because in areas inside here, it's showing signs of wear. And in some places, see if I can find one here. You can see here, it's really getting worn down. Some places, it's even worse. Where the links, where they join and overlap, perhaps like this one. Although that's still pretty strong, that's probably 12 millimeters in diameter there. Here's another place where it's heavily corroded or worn. What I'm hoping is that, yeah, that's right there is pretty badly worn as well. But even so, it's still, that's still at least 12 millimeters. What I'm hoping is that that one there is really worn. But still, I mean, that's as big as my finger. That's still a pretty substantial chain. And quite strong at that diameter. What I'm hoping is that, this one. That's really worn, that one right there. What I'm hoping is that I can salvage maybe a 5-meter piece out of this chain that still has all the links in pretty good condition. And I can get another piece of chain and shackle the good 5 meters to the newer chain. But it's Christmas Day today, and obviously not doing anything at all like that. The typhoon really messed up downtown Cebu. Very difficult to get gasoline. I've been unable to get cash out of an ATM because the lines are so long at all the ATMs that the wait would be many hours. So just taking it easy and waiting for after this weekend, maybe I can get some cash. I'm not even sure I'm going to bother trying to go downtown into Cebu until after New Year's. And this is the mooring anchor that I use. You can see it's quite a substantial piece of hardware. The main shackle on the anchor itself still looks to be in pretty good condition. I'm having to hold the dinghy here with the wind. So the shackle that attaches the chain to that shackle is starting to show some signs of corrosion. So that really needs to be replaced. The chain down here doesn't look too bad. It's got a lot of shelves growing on it and such. So that will all go back in the water once it's refurbished. It's amazing how well cast iron holds up in the saltwater environment. Let's see, there's a crack here. That's just surface scale. Yeah. But the main shank and the cross arm for the flukes all in good condition yet. So it served me well. I mean, it's been in the water for a number of years and has held the boat previously through the edge of 2 smaller typhoons. So no complaints on its effectiveness or durability. Fortunately, I had some scrap pieces of plywood left ashore, and I was able to cobble together 2 thwarts for the dinghy so I can use it. These are not a permanent fix, just a temporary fix so I can have my car to get back and forth to shore in. I didn't have enough to make the forward thwart, but the 2 is enough to hold the dinghy in proper shape for use. Well, hello again, everybody. It's Christmas Day here aboard Sunshine. Dee Dee's down below in a conversation with one of her friends. And this is a little retrospective of the storm, which was a week ago. Altogether, I think that I was well prepared. I had filled the water tanks on the boat, gotten extra diesel fuel, had plenty of food, gotten the boat above deck as ready as I could as far as taking off anything that might present windage. I had replaced my mooring lines and the swivel to the mooring chain about 2 months ago with some pretty heavy duty stuff. Not in anticipation of a typhoon hitting, but because the older stuff was showing signs of wear. So all things considered, I thought I was in pretty good shape, pretty ready. Of course, it's always the unforeseen events, unforeseen circumstances that come around and bite one in the butt. And I had no way of anticipating that a tree would be dislodged and carried directly to my mooring line, and the first main branch, or the first main fork in the tree, would lodge over my mooring line. Now, this proved to be the undoing of my mooring. Number one, because in the beginning of the storm, the current was flowing into the harbor. This is a storm surge current from the north, and that somewhere off to the north of the boat, that tree became dislodged from the land, and that fork slipped quite neatly over my mooring line, and the upper part of the tree, which even in the photos you only see a small fraction of, managed to get snagged in the chain for my primary bow anchor, which was attached to the swivel between my mooring lines and the mooring chain. And as that tree was bouncing up and down, of course, with this wind waves, it continually dislodged the bow anchor and was lifting it off the bottom and pulling on my mooring anchor, which I think is what ultimately upset the whole situation that I had. And of course, at first I had no idea that was what happened. It wasn't until much later in the evening that I was able to get up forward and see that, yes, indeed, there was a tree hanging over my mooring line and tangled in with the chain for the primary bow anchor. Of course, by then, it was really too late to do anything. I couldn't drop my secondary bow anchor because it would have just fouled in that tree by dropping it over the port side. And there would be no point in dropping it over the starboard side, because what I needed to do was get the boat further to the north, because by this time the wind was blowing from the southeast to about the south-southeast, and it was just enough in the east to be pushing me towards the shallows. The boat was continually slowly drifting around, dragging my mooring with it, and that rather substantial tree, complicated by the fact that I couldn't go to port in the boat, as I have explained before, because for a couple hours during the height of the storm, so long, another vessel who was having much greater troubles than I kept sitting right off my port side, so I couldn't turn towards him. And even when he finally got around to getting a little further away from the boat and hanging by his stern anchor, I didn't dare turn to port and cross over for fear of getting hooked up in his stern anchor line or stern anchor rode. And by the time he got cleared out of the way, it was too late. I was already touching bottom. Couple this with the fact that for some weird reason, the oil pressure on my engine dropped to zero, and I had to shut it down. So I had no power and no usable dinghy. The boat wasn't really going anywhere, because once the keel touched the bottom, that was it. It was pretty much stuck there. And of course, in the later hours of the morning before sunrise, the wind had already started to drop substantially. So we wound up aground with the boat heeling over. The side of the hull was not touching the bottom, although I don't think it would have hurt anything because it was all sand and mud. The local cruising community banded together and gave me a great deal of assistance. We cut up that tree, dragged it off, and at the morning high tide they tried to get me off, but it was just not quite enough. So they came back later in the early evening while there was still daylight, and as the tide came in, sunshine floated off, and they towed me out to another mooring. And that's where I am now. So there's not a great deal I can do. It's Christmas Day. Of course, leading up to Christmas Day, the conditions were pretty crazy because we just had a major typhoon go through the area. Downtown Cebu was initially completely without power and communication. I did manage to get 2 videos uploaded from my location, but that took 6 or 7 hours of time to upload those 2 short videos. I'm not sure when I will get this video uploaded. Probably during the middle of the night when the traffic on the net is much lighter. Conditions in Carmen are not bad. There was some damage, but it's not catastrophic. The biggest problem I have is the fact that there's only a limited number of ATMs in the immediate area. And each one of them, I've been there 4 times now, has had a line of at least 100 or more people trying to get cash. Well, I wasn't about to go stand in line for 4 or 5 hours to get some cash. Number one, I couldn't possibly stand up for that long. And number 2, I just had other things I could do rather than stand around waiting to get money. However, that also meant that I didn't have money to spend on virtually anything. No Christmas festivities, and no presents, no food, nothing. And just sitting out here on the boat, hoping that next week, after starting on Monday or perhaps Tuesday, conditions will get better with the ATM. The water is running here, the electricity is back on, and for the most part the phone system and the internet are working fine. I know further to the south, the closer one gets towards Cebu City and south of Cebu City, conditions are still pretty unstable. And certainly on Bohol, which is a neighboring island to Cebu, not that far from here at all, severely devastated by the storm. Nadine Didi has a brother over there, married brother, has 2 sons, and she has no idea what his condition or his family is because there's no communication. She has an older sister who's married and has a couple sons that lives just south of Cebu City, and had no direct communication with them. Presumably their communications is still upset. They had a house down there and the roof blew off, and the upper parts of the house, 2 or 3 stories high, were flooded. Nadine's, Didi's oldest nephew is a seaman, and he was on a ship up in Manila, and he was able to briefly contact his sister. So all the family members are okay there, but the house is in disarray, and of course the city itself is in disarray as far as communications, power, water, gasoline, all those things difficult to get. Hopefully here over the next week or so, conditions will improve, for at least for the people in Cebu. I know the southern end of Cebu got hit much more severely than where I am, which is about 30 miles north of Cebu City. Anyway, hoping everybody has a good holiday season, certainly better than a lot of the folks here in the Philippines are going to have, and that the new year brings new and better things.